question is, what's the price range, the cost of mediation for an existing home? It's difficult to say carte blanche, so I'll give you a range. I mean, I've seen them as low as $1,800 and run up to $4,500. And each house is different, so if there's a number of slabs, if you're built into a hill and maybe you've got 3-step slabs, that's going to cost more because they have to do more coring and run greater lengths of pipe and connect it.
Just one slab.
Yeah, one slab, and then the driving cost differential at that point becomes how hard it is to get that pipe outside. Sometimes we can go out through the rim joists, and when you do that, you follow the same code as if you were venting a gas appliance, and sometimes you have to go all the way out through the roof. So, in one slab, it could be $1,800 to maybe $3,000 if it's really complex to get the pipe outside. Good question. Yes, sir. Very good question. So the question is, what position is the real estate association taking on radon? And what I can tell you is in the US, where they're probably 25 years ahead of us in terms of radon awareness, there's now 33 states where radon is part of the residential real estate transaction. So some form of measurement and disclosure has to occur in 33 states in the US. I can tell you right now, I'm part of a consulting group that's consulting to the Canadian Real Estate Association. They're taking this matter very seriously, and they're in the process of drafting a position paper that will be released in 2017 to all their members. So they are looking at it, they are aware of it, and they are active in it. I spoke with somebody earlier, I think it was Dawn, that was saying they used to live in Canada. Canada is a suburb of Ottawa and has extremely high levels of radon. And the realtors there are very, very much aware, and they talk to their clients about it emphatically. Good question. Sure, good question. So the question is, if you've got radon in the home and you don't have a mitigation system, is it a good idea to open windows and turn on a fan and avoid the low-lying areas of the house, the basement? Absolutely. I mean, if that's all you've got, the best thing is dilution. So open the windows, and the bathroom fan at 100 CFM or 150 CFM, that helps too. The only downside with the bathroom fan running and the windows closed is you're creating a greater negative pressure in the house, so that the ingress of radon is going to actually accelerate because the pressure under the slab is higher than the pressure in the house. And as that differential gets bigger, the physics work such that more radon is going to enter the house. So that's the only thing you have to be cautious of in that. Good question. Sir, you had another one?
Yeah, I just was thinking, I know as you said in the directions for placing our detectors, you mentioned more than 4 hours for living space and everything else.
Yes.
So in our case, we put it on the main floor, basically.
Yep.
And the basement does have a bedroom. It's got a play area for grandkids and all that.
Yeah.
That question is still out there, I guess, once we get the results what is 4 hours in a certain sense that really there's nothing to worry about?
Well, what we really look for is we want to test the area that you would generally live in. So in a case like yours where the basement's not used every day or maybe only used 1 day a week, we're more interested in the residents or the occupants of the building, what they're exposed to in a quote-unquote normal day. And 4 hours is kind of the benchmark that's been driven where that kind of normalizes that you'd have enough time to be exposed to it. But what I would say to you, because you tested the main floor and the basement is finished, if your main floor came back at 100 or 125 becquerel, something like that, I would recommend testing the basement, because you might find that the basement is 300 or 400 if the main floor's. And at that point, if you've got grandkids playing down there, and maybe they're only there 1 day a week, but over time. And the other thing, I don't think either of us talked about it, but infants have a higher rate of respiration than we do, so they're susceptible to radon. The radon impacts them faster than it impacts us, right? So yeah, I would look at your numbers. You know, when you get them, if you've got a concern, reach out to myself or Jenny or Britt, and we'll walk you through it. But that would be, if it was my family and my kids, that's what I would do. Good question. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes?
For remediation, is it important to fix the cracks in the basement floor?
Yes, a certified professional, they're absolutely going to do that. We don't see cases where just fixing the cracks is a mitigation solution in unto itself, but it's part of the full mitigation solution. So
You're going to dig down there and put that.
what they'll likely do, they'll look, every home's going to be different, every building's going to be different, but one solution would be that they would come in, they would core a 5-inch hole in your floor, they'll dig out a bucket full of material from under your slab, they'll go out across the slab and drill some 1/2-inch holes, they'll put manometers in them, put a vacuum setup on that 5-inch hole, and they'll run tests to see how much communication they've got across the field. And if they've got no communication 20 feet away, then at that point, they might need 2 extraction points or 3 extraction points, right? And that's really what they're looking for. They want to make sure that they're getting the whole slab. And really, at the end of the day, people get caught up in it. Yes, when we're venting the slab, we're getting rid of some radon outside the house. There's no question we're doing that. But really what we want to do is depressurize under that slab. Because as soon as we get the pressure under the slab lower than the pressure of the house, the physics don't work anymore for radon to enter. So, but they will seal the cracks. There's some special caulkings that have been developed that are radon proof, and they'll use that material to seal. Good question as well. Yeah. Yes?
This gentleman right there was asking about real estate transactions, but what if I'm renting a house? If I'm renting, would my landlord need to tell me what is the level of radon?
Well, it's very interesting. Right now, there's no province in the country where that's required. So the question was, if I'm renting a property, does the landlord have an obligation to disclose the radon levels? And the quick answer is no. The province of Ontario looks like it's going to be the first one to break that barrier with the changes to the Landlord Tenants Act there. And they're going to make mandatory testing for any subgrade units or any units in contact with the ground floor. So that's going to be a big game changer. And I guess, I'm optimistic that that's going to happen and it's going to take place across the country. And to kind of move to the commercial landlord side of the coin, we're seeing a massive interest from the large commercial developers right across the country in testing their buildings, because there's a liability concern on their behalf. If they've rented an unsafe premise to somebody and somebody gets sick while living in that premise or working in that premise, that's a problem. So it's a good question. Sir?
How often do you have to test? Like if you tested one this year, you found nothing, is that good for what, 100 years?
No, absolutely not. And I think Health Canada recommends every 5, yeah. Health Canada recommends like 5 years.
Where's rent going to go when this comes down? All the rents have to go up. So the tenants pay for it. The test that you said are not cheap.
Well, the testing itself is not crazy. Like you can buy a test device, an alpha tracker, for $40, and it'll cost you $12 to send it back to lab. So it costs you $52 to test. If you're testing right now and the results came back, Jenny, that slide you showed was 87 plus or minus 12, right? So I'm always wearing my worst case hat when I'm doing these presentations anyhow. So that would be, it could be 99, right? So if I'm in a WHO country where it's 100, I'm right at the limit. So if that was me, in 12 months, I'd test again just to see, because it can change, especially in the area of the country we live in where we have those tremors and earthquakes and that shakes up fissures. And interestingly, not related, but something you might find interesting, we're working on technology right now, or we've developed technology, we're selling it now in the state of California, Radon is a fantastic tool for predicting earthquakes. So we've developed these sensors. They're 1 to 3 meters long. They're probes that go in the earth, and they're totally autonomous. They're solar powered, and they broadcast the radon levels via either cell phone, Wi-Fi, satellite, depending on where they are in the country. And we collect that data. And we know from the historical data of earthquakes around the world, because geologists always measure the radon levels for a range of things. Radon levels are a huge tool in mining exploration. The exploration guys are constantly measuring radon in water and radon in the ground, and it's a leading indicator for many minerals. So we know over history when there's a sudden change in the radon level, and it could be a big spike or a big deficit, that there will be an earthquake within 10 to 24 hours. So I had some meetings in January with the state of California, and it looks like we're going to put several thousand of these probes through the state and as a test and watch them. So sorry about that, kind of got off topic there, but it's kind of interesting. Yes? Yeah, so the question is anybody out there lobbying governments to give some kind of a tax credit or something to help offset the cost? Great question. Short answer is yes, we employ lobbyists in many of the provinces in Canada, and through Karst we fund lobbyists as well, and we are actively pursuing government. Province of Manitoba has it's Manitoba Hydro gives you a credit if you're doing radon mitigation. There's been some conversations with Fortis here in BC about them engaging, and it's not dead, it just hasn't happened yet. And certainly we're lobbying the government. We had a big push in the province of Ontario last fall where we had people writing their MLAs saying, hey, you gotta give us a tax break for that. So hopefully that comes through. Great question. So the question is, are there studies or is there any irrefutable evidence to link other cancers to radon or radiation? Right now, we are actually funding, or partially funding, I should say, a study at the Northern Health Facility in Sudbury, which is the main hospital that services Northern Ontario. There's a doctor there by the name of Denny Waugh, who's actually on our board of directors as well, but they're looking at the incidence of childhood leukemia related to radon, because there's an area of Sudbury that's got a super unusually high rate of childhood leukemia, and the radon levels are very, very high there as well. So we're trying to link that. Certainly.
Otherwise, it's the only known one right now is lung cancer.
Right.
Some of the other information is still kind of coming out, but for lung cancer, it's a known carcinogen. So the International Agency for Research on Cancer, that's the big one with the World Health Organization, they classify radon as a group 1 carcinogen. So that's the same as things like asbestos or UV radiation from the sun is also group 1. So that one is, we know for sure. Other things like the stomach cancer is not classified at that level. It's more still a probable because information is still coming out, and things like leukemia, when it's not known, it's still being under consideration.
So there is studies going on out there looking at other things for sure. And in my mind, and I'm not a medical doctor or a research doctor, but I certainly talk to a lot of them and get to meet with them 2 or 3 times a year. And there's certainly, the consensus is mounting that there's going to be other cancers that are going to present as well. Good question too.
Just if I may just color in that, on the lung cancer or something, I mean, is it something that is typically over a period of a whole lifetime and it hits people later in life, or is there a time limit on it? What's the experience?
Answer that one. Yes, it's something that people develop later in life. So with radon, it's, again, your risk will increase with the greater amounts of radon you're exposed to and the longer amount of time that you're exposed to it. So as David mentioned earlier in his presentation, how the radon is basically it's impacting your DNA in your lungs, and over time when your DNA is replicating, it can replicate wrong, and over time when those kind of wrong mutations happen, that's what can lead to cancer. So that can take many, many years to develop. So it is usually something that is seen later in life, and one of the reasons too why we also can't track where people move throughout their lives too, right? So sometimes they don't know where their original exposure came from. It could be somewhere they lived 20 years ago. Yeah, so if you were looking at risk, who's more at risk for radon? Those who are younger are more at risk if you're exposed, just because I would have longer to live than perhaps my grandparent who's also exposed to the same amount, because I have a longer lifespan for those mutations to happen in my life. Does that make sense?
Our Victoria Reservoir water is widely advertised as good water, but I'm wondering, is it tested for radon, and is it also tested whenever we have a local earthquake to see if clean it up?
So it's a good question. I mean, I don't know is the honest answer. I would guess in all probability they are not testing it for radon, because it's very complicated to test for radon in water. It's very difficult to collect the sample to get an accurate test. And we fight that all the time. It's, there's a house up in Soyuz. I'm there on Monday actually. They've got a 700-foot well, and the well doesn't produce a lot of water, so they have a cistern in the basement, in the crawl space of the house. So the well fills to the cistern. So every time it fills the cistern, it's releasing radon in this crawl space. The numbers are off the charts. But we have no way to get a water sample that hasn't been aerated, so the radon levels are gonna be false. However we do it, we've tried 20 different things. We know there's uranium in the water, so we know there's radon in the water, and we know because the crawl space is full. But how much radon in the water, we'll never know. So it's difficult. Like, the city would not be testing it. There's no way. It's unlikely, because I know even with the reservoir, before that water reaches the home, they're aerating it at some point, because that's the go-to method for water treatment is aeration. So, somebody else had a question over here?
Well, I was just wondering, talking about the exposure and the damage to the DNA, is it similar to smoking? Do you know that once there's mediation, then your chances of developing cancer from it?
Well, I think that
Cumulative risk.
it's cumulative, but the statistic is, the comparison, I will say, maybe statistics a poor choice of words, at about 300 becquerels, that's the equivalent impact on your lungs of smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I had a doctor tell me that's roughly what and it's kind of a little bit of witchcraft science, but that's what the math has done. And
Yeah, but if you're asking, like, when you quit smoking, your risk for lung cancer starts to decrease because you're no longer smoking, you're no longer exposing to it. So it is similar to radon in the sense that, if you are exposed to radon and then you stop being exposed to radon, your risk will decrease, but that time that you were exposed to radon still made an impact because you were still breathing in those particles and making an impact on your lungs. So you can never get rid of that, but you can prevent your future exposure and your future risk. So that's kind of the big thing and the big point of tonight and the whole testing project was that we can prevent this, and this doesn't have to be a risk for us, and it's just, getting our friends, our family to test and hopefully fixing your home. But, I think, pretty good. If you have any further questions, David and I will stick around and you can ask us some, but thank you very much all for coming tonight. We have lots of resources up at the front, so feel free to take what you need and what you'd like, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks very much everybody for coming out. Cheers.